Hi everybody. So I am a hairdresser, but I guess maybe I'm not just a hairdresser. I've spent a lot of time creating images, entering competitions, and last year I asked myself, have I created images that are going to stand the test of time? You know, are they going to be relevant to people in 20 years? So I went back and I did some research, and I'm like, what do I like to look at? What images have really stood out to me? So I went back to Sassoons and looked at these incredible iconic images that face melt, and you know, is it black and white? Is it the lack of movement? Or is it the technique, you know, that was used within it? So I started basket weaving. First I had to learn how to basket weave, and then I was, you know, deep diving down into these mourning brooches from the Victorian era. I had to colour wave metre long pieces of hair, stitch that to felt, back that to a cork board, and then just sit there for a really long time. So the process of doing that, you can see one of the images from my final collection and how it really sort of, you know, gives you that stillness and that stoic feeling that those images had, those references that I loved from back in the Sassoon era. So moving on from that, obviously curls. Curls are huge, but what I love is the way that in the 70s they did like a Botticelli look, and they permed it. But I don't know how to perm. So I'm like, how am I going to do that? First I thought maybe I would crochet some curls out of hair, but that was a nightmare. So then I got myself a balloon kit, an animal balloon making kit, found some old school setting lotion, and I started wrapping it around the balloons. And I wish that you could all be in my house because it was some serious ASMR when I popped it and it was like, and it came out. But I ended up with these beautiful curled forms, but I still needed to sort of create it into that Botticelli form. So I backed them all onto a piece of felt and attached a ribbon, and then I carefully laid it around that model's head. And then you can kind of see how with that tilt back of the chin, how you get that reference to that beautiful form of that Botticelli in the image on the right. And of course, black and white, and that lack of wind. So whilst I love diving into history for reference, I've got my own history. When I was pregnant with my first child, I had really bad pelvic instability, and all I could do was sit on the couch and shove bobby pins together. So I started making some looks, and this was something that I created, but it wasn't with a top photographer. So I thought, I'm gonna revisit that. So I started again making my big long straps, and I was wrapping it around and making my loops, but it just wasn't landing. There was something about it that just didn't have the weight and the body that I needed for this collection. So I had to go back and I needed to do some research. So I started looking at that Elizabethan, that prominent forehead of the queens, these incredible women, and how just pushing back that shape of what I had created and sort of laying it back and exposing that forehead and simplifying the whole form, I was able to create one of the images from my collection there. Moving on, we're going to move on. We're on to finger waves. Okay, so finger waves, obviously an incredible art form, but what I love about these old paintings is how they sort of come off the head, and the finger waves are almost suspended into the air. So I was like, I really want to somehow delve into that. So what I needed to do was back the finger waves onto a new found product. I backed it onto a metallic cardboard, you know, still utilizing that really old technique of finger waving, flat finger waving, which is really hard, and sort of pushing it through. I waited for those to set and be rock hard, and then I was able to cut them out, which is an amazing way to hide all your little boo-boos on the edges. But you can see how the metallic paper actually reflected, and they look really 3D, like those paintings sort of coming off the back of the head. So yeah, that's one of my final images there on the beautiful model sparrow. So for me, I'm predominantly a cutter, so it wouldn't be a hair collection if I didn't do a haircut, and what better haircut than a bob? You know, it's been around forever, but you know, I couldn't just do a bob, could I? So what I wanted to do was, through the back of my model, sort of layer something through the back that had a homage back to the Queen of Egypt, back to Cleopatra. So I went down a huge rabbit hole, a big meta hole of digitally printing pictures of hair onto hair, and it didn't really work. But if anyone's got a digital printer out there and you're willing to take a chance on a hairdresser, I'd love to explore it further. But this is where I landed. I ended up sort of creating a print using a raw tint application, and then going back in with the peroxide to develop this kind of hieroglyphic kind of Keith Haring print that I was then able to layer through the back of that bob, and you can see the final image on the left there, and how this model's called Funky Nutmeg. But so on Funky Nutmeg, but what really stands out to me is the lack of wind and how you can appreciate that image, whereas, you know, all my other images, I get the hairdryer and I blow it, but this was still and serene. So after all my work on my collection, Athena, I entered and I won. So yes, I am Australian Hairdresser of the Year, something I'm very proud of, but the real thing that resonated was this newfound way of working, like going back and looking and adding currency to my work. And just recently I was asked to do a photo shoot for the Journal magazine. They gave me the theme of deities and the underworld, so of course I went to my favourite, Athena, but I wanted to depict the struggle between Athena and Medusa. So I went and utilising the techniques that I developed through my collection, Athena, I created a snake that then was placed sort of as an earring. I turned it into an earring and placed it around that cylindrical bowl that was really powerful and really told the story of Athena and Medusa. But thank you all for your time. Thank you so much.